Jeff McKay is a father, husband, business owner, and school board member running for the 4th State Senate District. He's District 4 through and through. He was born in Modesto, attended Modesto Junior College, and went on to graduate from Stanislaus State. His grandmother is even the longest living resident of Ceres. That's why he chose to make a life, raise a family, and start his businesses here. Jeff is an entrepreneur and a jobs maker. Over the past 3 decades, he built several homegrown California businesses from scratch: agriculture, construction, restaurants, and payment processing. He knows what it's like to take a big risk and have all your chips on the table. Jeff is proud that he's been able to offer good-paying middle-class jobs to people who want to work hard and get ahead. He wants to make California an opportunity society again, where a good idea and hard work can help anyone move up. Always to the point, Jeff knows what he believes. He supports the biggest middle-class tax cut in state history. He believes life is expensive enough, and we deserve to keep more of our hard-earned money. He'll work to make California business-friendly again, to prevent good-paying jobs from leaving the state for greener pastures. He'll demand Sacramento take wildlife prevention seriously, so that we move to a war footing when it comes to keeping our communities safe. He strongly opposes the defund the police movement and will vote to increase law enforcement and reinstate tough penalties for crime. And he'll demand Sacramento politicians finally actually build the water storage that voters approved years ago, so that agriculture and agriculture jobs flourish. Jeff lives in Modesto and enjoys spending time with his beautiful wife Brenda and 2 daughters, Madison and Morgan. Welcome to the Modern Assyrian program on AGN. My name is Carmen Morad. My special guest today is Jeff McKay, candidate for the California State District Senate, number 4, a newly drawn district. Welcome to the program, Jeff.
Thank you, Carmen. I appreciate being on.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're campaigning, you're a businessman, so we really appreciate you being on the Assyrian Global Network.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
We've been talking about this district, about after the redistricting of the 2020 census, a lot has changed with boundaries, whether it's been city, state, county, but this district is being called the Motherlode. It has 13 counties in it. Jeff, what has prompted you to run and represent constituents in this very large Senate district?
Yes, it is extremely large, extremely long. I think it encompasses, approximately 363 miles from the top to the bottom of the district. I'm fortunate in that Stanislaus County, which is where I was born and raised, represents about half of the voters. The foothill areas, are a little bit more sparsely populated, but are just as important. And as you mentioned, there are 13 counties in total. Why I was running, it's kind of a funny, interesting story. I was talking to our local assemblyman, Heath Flora, one day after we were done golfing, and I was kind of complaining a bit about the direction that the state was going in, and primarily how they were treating businesses very unfairly. And Heath kind of looked at me and he said, "Jeff," he goes, "quit bitching about it." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Either run for office," he goes, "or support somebody who will run for office." And I said, okay, let's talk about, who can we support? So he mentioned a few assembly races and some candidates that he felt he wanted to support. And I said, okay, well, what about, the Senate District 4? It's a brand new district. Do you have somebody that can run for that seat? And he says, "I've got a great candidate." I said, okay, well, tell me about him. And he doesn't name the name. I don't notice that right away, but he starts talking about this guy. And I I said, yeah, Heath, that's the kind of guy I can get behind. I go, who is it? And he looks at me and goes, I'm talking to him. I'm like, oh, you turkey. Okay. But it made me think in kind of a third person term. And I went home and I thought, well, yes, I can support that kind of guy, and I am that guy. And so I think I can do a good job. I love this state, but I hate seeing what's happening to everyday Californians, and seeing the problems that we continue to have, and that's what has pushed me to join this fight in Sacramento.
Thank you for that very honest and candor reply. I also know Assemblyman Heath Flora, and he's been a champion for the values of the Valley and the Assembly District.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
He is wonderful, and his office truly serves the needs and is there for constituents of all sides. So let me talk to you about why we have our candidates on this program. The premise of this program, Jeff, has been civic engagement and to encourage voters and viewers and constituents to be informed voters. And one of the perks of that is to get to know the values that our candidates stand for and what they represent and the kind of experience that they will take with them to office. I want to remind our viewers that you served as a councilman for the city of Ceres as a council member. That itself shows that voters trusted your judgment to be the steward of their monies. That's one. But what really is impressive to people who are successful entrepreneurs and businessmen, and especially when it comes to hiring local people and offering them good paying jobs. Tell us about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur such as yourself, especially in the very important business of agriculture, construction, and you can tell me more. There's restaurants, there's payment.
There is.
It seems like.
It's very diverse. Yes. It really takes somebody, number one, you have to be able to take a risk, risking your own money, sometimes risking other people's money. And especially in my business where we were creating things from scratch in many respects, had never been tried before in many respects, or new niches in certain industries. So I'd say, being a risk taker, is a bit of one. An adventure, often helps, having some kind of a vision, and certainly the drive. You have to have a lot of drive to be able to pull it off. It's a lot of work, and not all of them, are successful. Sometimes, you have failures, and how do you handle those failures? And do you pick yourself up, and are you stronger for that, or do you give up and move on to something else? And I've always been fortunate that I've done a lot of homework, a lot of preparation, a lot of perspiration that goes into this. My parents weren't wealthy. My father was a captain with the sheriff's department. My mom worked at the high school. And so you learn to make do with very little. And I didn't have a lot. And slowly, over the years, we're able to grow my quote little bit of businesses into something a little larger. And now I think we employ a few hundred employees through the 5 businesses that I currently own.
Now, those are the kind of qualities that I think it takes to be someone who can navigate through the system when it comes to state legislation, right? It has to do with asking the right questions. It has to do with understanding what people really need when it comes to representing them. Let's talk about your role with the school board. As you know, with COVID and the pandemic, the way that our kids learn has changed. Education has changed. Tell us about your success when you served on the school board and how you created incentives for teachers.
One of the things I like to pride, myself, is that I believe that I brought more of a business sense to the school district. Being more competitive on bidding, more of a business atmosphere. When I first came on, we were one of the last districts to interview for teachers, and you know that was something that I fought hard to get changed. And when we brought new superintendent on, she agreed with me, and that is something that we moved to be one of the first in our area to hire employees and teachers. And so we went from picking up the people that everybody passed over to being in the front of the line and being able to pick up teachers and the teachers that we wanted, and those who interviewed the best, and that we got the best of the best, instead of waiting for everybody else to interview first. Another nice change that I think that we made, I had talked to a teacher in series who had tutored my kids, and I wanted her to come work for our district. And she said, "Oh, I can't do that." And I said, "Well, why? Why can't you do that?" She said, "Well, you only give us a certain amount of years, of work experience, and then you cap it off." And I said, "Well, that doesn't make sense. We want the best teachers." And so I fought to get that changed, and we did. And so now we're able to attract a much higher and better level of teacher and administrator for our district. So those are just two quick examples of what I think that we've done to make our district better, a little bit more relevant, and much more successful. And we've seen our test grades increase because of that.
So you implemented your ability to be a good businessman, but it impacted teachers and the quality of the education that, as you said, it made it more competitive for people. That's very important.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that needs to be had more with education. There seems to be more obstacles than there is movement and advancement in that process. So thank
Right.
you for sharing that with us. You're also known as a jobs maker person. Tell us what that means. You said you have hundreds of employees, but it's also important for people to know the kind of success that you have had, along with your, I want to say, grit, your commitment and dedication, but it's also the love of community that you want to serve. And a part of that has to do with balancing of everything that it takes that voters want to know that you will fight for as their representative. You have taken a stance on being an opponent of defund the police. Tell us how you feel about law enforcement standing up for more protection for our law enforcement and public safety.
Sure, thank you. So my father was a captain with the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department for well over 30 years. And so I kind of have a natural inherited affinity for law enforcement. I have many family members that are also either PD somewhere, or sheriffs, or district attorneys that serve, in law enforcement. And so I just have a natural affinity for it. And you've seen the examples of society and communities that have tried to defund the police, Portland, San Francisco, and that really didn't work out well for people, did it now? And we hate to say "I told you so" because it comes at a great expense, but we did try to tell people that this doesn't work. You can't defund the police. You have nothing but anarchy and chaos if that's something that you try to do. So I most certainly have a great fear of any type of defunding the police movement, and I would fight it with all my passion.
Thank you for sharing that. That conversation has really evolved, and California seems to be getting a bad rap about that, about what do we do when it comes to passing legislation on that, especially when it comes to Sacramento and, being so strict on certain conversations. And that takes us from crime. We talked about business, economic recovery, and economic empowerment. And then, of course, public safety. Let's talk about one component that I think a lot of your voters will want to know about, or constituents, will be the homelessness. It has become an issue that it has attracted conversations and all the millions of dollars that's being spent, whether it's on a city level, county, state. Where do you stand on how to take this conversation and elevate it when it comes to solving and hopefully coming up with a resolution with the homelessness situation, especially in California?
It is a very emotional issue. It's a very problematic issue, but it is an issue that needs to be addressed. I've had to move my office that was at a location that had a lot of homeless people that encamped out in front of our offices, and we had young ladies that would show up early in the morning, and it was creating some very security issues for them, and it caused us to have to move the office, and that's not fair to my company, but it also wasn't fair to the property owner that we were leasing property from. But it's also not fair to the homeless people. They don't have a place to go. So there are some solutions that are to be had, but they need to be well thought out. Money is required. I don't know if it means going back to more mental health facilities to help take care of these people. But you also need to address the issue. How do we stop them from being habitually homeless? What types of assets and resources can we place at society's disposal to help these people with mental health, with craft learning, with jobs learning? And I think only answering those types of questions will you finally, start to make headway into the problem. I don't know if there's any great one solution, but there's a lot of people out there much smarter than I that should be studying this and, telling our government and the governor and our legislature, what are the solutions that we can look at? What can we try? And let's try some things, right? Like a business, let's try this and see if it works. Let's try maybe this concurrently and see if it works. But we do need to address this issue. It's not attractive. It's not fair to everyone that's out there, both the people that are living in the homelessness and the people who have to put up with it. Let's be honest.
Absolutely. We spoke to someone who is a judge, a candidate, and he looks at it from how homelessness is a byproduct of what has happened. Should we concentrate on preventing it? Should we concentrate on hiding it? Or, Stanislaus County had a wonderful program years ago with focus on prevention. There's different phases of homelessness. There is the kind that we see on the freeways. And I truly believe by the time they are so visible in our society, it doesn't mean that we forget about them, but it is kind of into the higher phases where we can concentrate on working on those who are on their way to become homeless and prevent that from advancing to where on the streets or on the freeways. So it's such a multi-level conversation, but we do know there's a lot of money going into it. There's also the conversation of enablers. There are so many organizations that once the homeless find out where they can get resources and services, they gravitate towards it.
Correct. Yes, that is
exactly correct. We want to be compassionate. We want to help those in need, but there has got to be a system. There has got to be a way of doing this without enabling it to grow. I was speaking to our former mayor in Modesto, and as you know, there was an encampment. And unfortunately, there were people there receiving services, Jeff, that they were not from Stanislaus County. They were from out of state. They found out.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and how do you decipher through who gets the services and who don't. How do you know where they live? They're homeless, right? They don't have a residence. It's a very complicated and complex problem. And hopefully, when you are a senator in Sacramento, you will be able to present legislation or work with legislation that can result in helping those who want help. It's not illegal to be homeless. It is we call it those who are experiencing homelessness. So it is a problem. You will be asked about it many, many times.
Yep.
I talked to Assemblyman Heath Flora about it. It is something that our county struggles with providing services. Our cities are providing locations and offices and motels. There are certain hotels that are being turned into residential havens, but all of that has to be paid. And we are a state that has a surplus. And unfortunately, it is not being spent in a manner where, and this takes me to my next question for you, inflation and gas prices. These are something that your constituents will be asking you about, because it is becoming unbearable for the high gas prices. For, California, we're known for our commuting time, right? For the freeways. And what ideas do you have that we can have some kind of a relief from these very high gas taxes and gas prices?
Well, the first natural response, I guess, would be to, do you cut or eliminate, part of the state gas tax, or a federal state and gas tax? Or do you, provide vouchers to people to help offset, the cost of the higher gas? The problem with that is, that raises many questions in of itself. Is it legal to give that kind of money? And what if I have an electric car, which I don't, but what if a person has an electric car and a gas voucher is not going to do them any good, or they use public transportation, so that wouldn't do them any good as well, despite the legality of whether it's appropriate to give people that money or not. And then as far as like eliminating a gas tax for a certain period of time, what are the ramifications of that? Do you just consequently lose the ability to fund roads? And so I don't have an answer. I don't have the statistical data that I would need to look at to be able to make a determination to say what is the best solution at this time. But as a state legislature, one of the benefits that you have is you have a lot of research at your disposal. Mm-hmm. And so there are people in the legislative offices that are there to help serve legislators and answer those types of questions. So those are some of the questions that I would want to have answered and some research done to figure out how to best tackle this problem and how to best to help the average consumer and the average Californian out there. And it affects me greatly. I have 5 businesses. We buy many products, and every single one of those products have gone up over the last 4 or 5 months or longer with COVID, the last year and a half in some cases. We couldn't get lids the other day for one of our fast food restaurants. Tried to order some equipment and they told me it was going to be 9 months out. 9 months. So these are also the problems that your average business person has to face. And many times you can't afford to pass the cost on, especially if you're doing business with people outside the state of California. And if you want to be competitive, it just means that you're going to have less profits, to keep your business.
Absolutely. You just hit it on the nail there. As a business owner, a lot of business owners are impacted. It wasn't enough that COVID-19 threw a monkey wrench into our economy, but now we have the gas prices. And I also want to talk to you about agriculture. Being in Stanislaus County, being the breadbasket of the world, as we call it, tell us about your business with agriculture. And of course, as you know, I'm going to ask you about water.
Sure.
How passionate are you about water storage, and how do you think we should take care of this fight over the water and the shortage of it?
So I'll answer the first part first. I grew up in agricultural, knocking, raking, sweeping almonds, picking peaches, picking boysenberries, um, drove forklifts in a apricot drying yard, just on and on. That's almost all my jobs growing up, and in college were agriculturally related. And approximately 10 years ago, my one of my business partners and we purchased a company up in Chico called Jesse Equipment Manufacturing. Jesse currently manufactures almond and walnut hullers, shellers, dryers, conveyors, that type of post harvest type of equipment, and we ship it all over the world. We have product. I don't even know how many countries we have now, but we do ship all over the world. I also, in Modesto, have a nut processing company that I buy almond and walnut hash, and we turn it into bird food. So that is my agricultural related companies that I have. As to the water storage,
Mhm.
the water issues, absolutely. I don't think we've had any funding until just recently that's been provided for water storage in California since I think John F. Kennedy was in office back in the early 1960s. But at the same time, our population has increased dramatically. So that's just horrible planning. If you were a business, they'd take you to court over the lack of foresight and planning, for the people that are within your business. And that's certainly the case here. We keep thinking that we're going to do more with less, with more people, and that just doesn't work out. So we definitely need more water storage capacity in California, and we need it right away. The governor should get off his butt. And we were just given some couple $1 billion worth of federal money. It just needs to clear the permitting processes in Sacramento, and the governor should be speeding that along and doing everything he can to help the people in California.
This is the kind of stern leadership that our farmers need in Sacramento, because as farmers, we know there is so much to worry about. The saying that whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over.
Right.
And, and that has been the issue for so long, as the Central Valley really needs that knowledge, ability, and that capacity to be able to fight for it in Sacramento. Jeff, what are your passions when it comes to the top 3 trending issues that you will work on when you're in the Senate?
Well, we've done some studying and consulting with people in our district, both business leaders, uh, uh, with political figures within the district, and my job is to try to represent my district to the best of my abilities. So to me, it was important to find out what issues were most important to them. Uh, One of the top issues that came up, which surprisingly was border protection. I wasn't aware that in my district it would be probably one of the top areas of concern for them. I know it is, many Americans' concerns, but they have indicated to me that that's one of their primary concerns is the illegal immigration, not proper immigration, but the illegal immigration and the protection of our border. So that would be one area that I would pay some attention to. Obviously, we have many foothill areas that are affected by fire.
Mhm.
Fire would obviously be one area that I would want to spend a lot of time and resources on helping protect my district from the fire and the issues that come with wildfires in our area. And then probably the third issue would be businesses and the the lack of empathy that they seem to have, that California seems to have for businesses. They keep wanting to beat up on us. They keep wanting to tax us. And it seems like they keep wanting to drive us out of California. And I really want to do whatever I can to try to turn the tide on that, try to protect our businesses as much as possible, and try to keep them in the state. So those would probably be three of the issues that I would be concerned about. Unfortunately, in California, there's so many issues. I could probably take up, our whole time with talking about what issues we need to address. Those are just a very few that really, need to be addressed. There's critical race theory. There's the trying to get rid of defunding the police, and that we've talked about already, and on and on. So there's many critical issues that we need to focus on.
That's why I only asked for 3.
Okay, sorry.
It would have to be only, you're right. There are so much. And each of the counties that is in this district has its own issues.
Yes.
One county has struggles with fires, for example. So forest management will get a lot of the attention because of what they need to do to maintain and prevent, not to mention preserve, because it has such a snowball effect into other issues as well. And then there are counties like Stanislaus County that has its own issues and problems. But in closing, Jeff, I would like to remind our viewers about, we talked about your leadership skills, not only as a businessman, but what it takes to be successful and giving back to the community by creating jobs. And these are good middle-class jobs, you call them, good paying jobs. That's very important. And I think it's an honorable thing to do when it's easier to go elsewhere and do it, as you so eloquently articulated. It can be easier elsewhere. But this is our home. This is where we live. This is where our kids are grown and are born and grown. And this is where we pay taxes. So in closing, I would like to ask you to just look straight in the camera and tell our viewers why they should vote for you than your opponent, for you to represent them in the Senate in this newly drawn district.
I like to think one of the main reasons why I'm running is I like solving problems. As a business person, that's all you do all day long. I'm very good at it. I believe I can take those same skill sets and bring it to my district and to Sacramento and help solve problems. I think I've shown that I'm capable of doing that, and I have done it. All my businesses have been successful, and I love solving problems. I also like pleasing people. And so one of my goals is to make sure that my district offices provide the utmost customer service to the constituents. And I will make sure that they're properly trained, they're properly motivated, and that they give our voters in the district the best care that they possibly can. I will make sure that I fight for what the district needs. I think I'm probably clever enough, more than any other candidate, to be able to reach across the aisle when needed and talk to maybe some of the more moderate Democrats to get things done. I want to be an effective legislator. I don't want to make our district irrelevant. And with the supermajority that we have, Democrats up in the legislature, it's going to take somebody very clever to get all of that done. And I believe I offer that ability more than any other candidate. California used to be the Golden State. We're a little bit tarnished now, but I would like to buff that shine up and make California a place that people want to come and want to live here. We're a great state. I love it. I could choose to be anywhere in the U.S. that I want to be. But I was born and raised in Modesto, and I most likely will die in Modesto. I love our area. So I believe I would be the best candidate to serve our district's needs.
Thank you, Jeff. As a reminder to our viewers, the primary is coming up in June, and the top 2 getters will be on the November ballot as well. So these are very exciting times. We say that about every election, but it's true. This election is very special, and it's very important for our voters to be informed, to get to know the candidates, to understand the kind of leadership skills, the kind of, as you said, community pride they bring, and also the ability to make decisions that benefits the constituents. Thank you for being so articulate and sharing everything that we needed to hear about you. I'm sure we can have a lot more to talk about, but today I would like to close with saying thank you so much for being here on the Modern Assyrian program, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you.
Carmen, I thank you so much. You're so well articulated. What a great example for everybody to have to follow your lead, and I appreciate being here.
Thank you. You're very kind. In closing, I would like to thank you again for making time to be on the Modern Assyrian, on the Assyrian Global Network. And we will see you next time as we let you know more about what's going on with the upcoming election. Thank you for joining us.